computer. Okay. Okay, guys, Zach Evnesh here. Welcome back to another episode of the Strong Life Podcast. We are on with strength and performance coach Jake Tuura. I came across Jake's information. A lot of you have been following me for a bit, researching knee pain and patellar pain, and went on YouTube and came across your video, seeing you dunking and lifting heavy. And I was like, all right, if that's the recipe to get a healthier knee, I'm going to learn from this guy, because most of the time it's been a very it's almost like a sensitive issue, and they're doing such isolation stuff. And then I come across your stuff and it's heavy weights, eccentrics, hard isometrics. I was like, this is my guy. This is my guy. So thanks for coming on the Strong Life Podcast. It is a weeknight. It's almost 8 p.m. for the both of us. And you've probably been coaching a lot today, as have I. And it's the end of a long day, my man. And here we are, fired up still.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. So we're going to have viewers on YouTube, listeners for the audio version. Give us, like a 3-4 minute background on who you are and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. Jake Tuura, I'm a strength coach at Youngstown State, assistant strength coach. I have a website, Jacked Athlete, where I pretty much just write about gaining muscle, vertical jump. That's about it. Lifting heavy. Mainly, so I'm in the strength and conditioning field. I loved basketball in high school. Actually, I hated sports my whole life until I was a senior and I started lifting weights. And then I actually saw some results within basketball. So my senior year, I was decent at basketball. I wanted to play in college. Never happened. I did a bunch of vertical jump programs, and I had jumper's knee in my right knee, just terrible jumper's knee. We'll talk more about that as we go on, but so it took me 3 years maybe of researching jumper's knee, patellar tendon issues, developing all the knowledge I possibly could. And then I was able to fix it to the point where now I can dunk basketballs, I can lift heavy, I can do anything I want with my knee. But for about 3 years, I couldn't do anything. And I had surgery. I went to PT. I had this whole time I just in pain. You have no clue what to do. I was stretching. I was icing. I was doing all these things that I never do now. But that's the best way to learn, it's through the experience. So right now, specifically, I'm focusing on the patellar tendon, and I'm releasing a resource probably in the next 3-4 days on the patellar tendon and jumper's knee, because the reason I'm interested, again, is because I suffered with it for 3 years, and all of the information was so bad and nothing helped me. Whereas now I think I have the opportunity to help a lot of athletes and coaches, so athletes can not take 3 years. They can maybe take a few days and they're done with it,
It's crazy. Interesting. You talk about your injury. A lot of great strength coaches, this is kind of what led them down the path, is they trained the wrong way for a sport or for multiple sports. They get injured. It ends everything. And then they have to go down the rabbit hole of heavy research. And I've always said, if you want to be a great strength coach, you need to research. That's why I before I even reached out to you to talk with you about my own knee, I purchased your course. I watched all of your videos. I read your articles. I listened to your podcast. I feel like if you want to be a great strength coach, before you just say, hey, Coach John Smith, tell me how to do X, Y, Z. I want to see a coach researching and kind of going down that rabbit hole. I want to, how old are you? Are you in your 20s still?
29.
29. Information has been very abundant the past 10 years. So it's shocking to hear that, I guess about 10 years ago is when you started researching, the jumper's knee, and you weren't coming across any solid information 10 years ago.
Yeah, dude. Actually, let's say maybe 2 years ago, I watched a video. Keith Barr had a video.
Yep.
I'm actually going to Keith Barr on my podcast in a few weeks, because he's one of the tendon researchers. There's maybe 3 or 4 that publish content for people to see and are on podcasts. but anyways, he put out a video. One of my friends sent it to me about tendons and about connective tissues and training them every 6 hours and doing isometrics. And that was 2 years ago. And everything he said, I had never heard anything about that, because all you ever hear is that tendons, they get low blood flow, they take forever to recover, and then he was saying you can train them in short intervals. They take 6 hours to adapt, train them in short intervals. So he was just saying a lot of things that went contrary to what I had believed. But yeah, dude, I watched everything, like Kelly Starrett, like Mobility
Sure.
WOD. He had stuff
Yeah.
on like patellar tendon, and it was like ice the knee all the time, do the couch stretch. Dude, I did that stuff. Like I iced my knee like 5 times a day with a cup of ice, like he says, massage ice.
Yes.
I did the couch stretch probably, I don't know, 3 times a day. I had probably had the most flexible rectus femoris and hip flexors in the world.
It. Yes.
Yeah, and everything I did avoided the knee. Everything I just specifically avoided putting stress on the patellar tendon, because the idea was your patellar tendon is overloaded because of your mechanics. I was using my knees too much when I was jumping or too much when I was landing. So I need to use my hips more. So everything I did deadlifts, I did hip, like glute activation. There was a guy, Anthony Michael. He doesn't post much anymore. He used to write on like T Nation. He had a knee pain course. It was like Chronic Athlete's Guide to Chronic Knee Pain or something.
Yes, I've got it. I think it was a lot of like glute work.
Oh, dude, it was crazy. It was like an hour of glute activation, laying on your stomach or laying on your back. And I did that for like 2 months, every single day when I was in college. It's like, I would just kind of put it off to the end of the day, and then it would be like, all right, now is my 1 hour of glute activation.
Work glutes. Yeah, it's insane.
And it didn't work. Everything I tried did not work. It wasn't until I started stressing my patellar tendon that it worked. And if you look at any tendon issue, well, if we just talk like performance tendons, like the Achilles or like the patellar tendon, yes, we can argue mechanics, but the tendon researchers will say mechanics is part of it, but it's always a load tolerance issue. You have to stress your tendon to increase the load tolerance. So I was never stressing my patellar tendon. I don't have any load tolerance. I was basically resting it. My load tolerance was 0. How would I ever be?
Doctors will always say, stop doing what you're doing and rest.
Yes. So this is in my upcoming tendon thing. Maybe it'll be done by the time this podcast is out. But yeah, resting is terrible for your tendons. Like all the tendon researchers say, if you bed rest somebody for like 2 weeks, your entire tendon, you'll lose all the mechanical strength, you lose all the function. Just think of like physical preparation for a sport. If you do nothing, do you think you can just go back into the sport? And you see it the most in tendons, because they basically lose their structural and functional properties when you just bed rest somebody. But I was basically bed resting my patellar tendon for years because that's what I thought I needed to do. But yeah, it wasn't until I started squatting heavy and then doing isometrics that now I think the difference is my load tolerance is so high. I can go dunk basketballs. I have no pain. I'm fine. But to look back for 3 years, I couldn't even imagine jumping at all. So it's pretty crazy, the whole process.
It is. And to give people context, when I post our podcast on my website, I'll embed videos of your training, all the different training. You did a good job of kind of breaking it down on your YouTube channel with the different things. You've got like your heavy lifting, you got your eccentrics, your isometrics. And the thing that just hit me is like, you're in Ohio. Did you grow up in Ohio, Jake?
No, I'm from Wisconsin. I'm from Northwest Wisconsin. So
okay.
I spent most of my life there. And then one big thing was I interned at University of Minnesota. So that was with Cal Dietz and other strength coaches there. So Cal was a pretty big influence. I was only there for about 3 months, but yeah, then after that, I worked at Minnesota Duluth, which is a Division II school, pretty good football school. And then I got this job in Ohio. So I've been here for about 3 years now. But that was where I'm from.
The thing that's hitting me with you in Ohio and us talking about knees is that I don't think I've seen box squat in any of your videos. And have I seen it? Do you have videos?
No, I never box squat.
Never box squat.
Like, I mean, in Ohio, yes, big because of West Side. But where I grew up, no, we're not. There's not big powerlifters there, and it's not a box squat place really.
Right, and so a buddy of mine, John Wellborn, interviewed Dr. Keith Barr maybe like a month ago. And when John was trained as a high school kid, through these powerlifters, they were teaching him vertical shin, really sit back. And he said he wound up having like serious like patellar tendonitis. And he said it was because he never stressed the knee. So when he got to Cal Berkeley, his strength coach was a weightlifting coach. So they were front squatting and back squatting and none of the box squat stuff. And he goes, it wasn't until I started stressing my knee in those positions and doing a lot of unilateral work that the knee pain went away. But if we were to speak to Louis, he would say box squat, so you strengthen your hamstring to stabilize the knee and not and then develop a
Yeah.
little bit more stability.
Yeah.
Um,
What's interesting with that is I just talked with Jill Cook. She's one of the researchers in Australia, probably
yep.
one of the most popular tendon researchers. But that was actually a question I had of because I was talking about let's say lifting increases the mechanical strength of the tendon. That's what they say. Lifting increases mechanical strength. Plyometrics like jumping. Yes, you need to do them to prepare for jumping, but they're more like that's not affecting the tendon to make it mechanically stronger. It's because the time and attention. The tendon cells are only active for a very short period of time.
Right.
So you need longer duration stuff where you're actually getting a muscle strength benefit. So, but I asked her about squatting, and she doesn't like squatting for patellar tendon, squatting in general, because you think of it, it's bilateral. You're limited by your back strength, really. If I had you pitch shark squat, you could probably pitch shark 1,000 pounds, and now you can only back squat 400 pounds. So are you really overloading your patellar tendons? And the people who get patellar tendinopathy are usually great athletes who can jump high, like upper 30s, 40-inch verticals. Those are people who are going to get the patellar tendinopathy. If people have tendinopathy, patellar tendinopathy, they might have something else. If they're not that good of an athlete and don't jump that often, they probably have patellofemoral or they have some other issue within their knee. I mean, and we're only talking anterior knee pain. I think you have, right, medial, lateral knee pain. You have a bunch of other. So, like, there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm only talking about patellar tendon pain, which is anterior, and only like one of the probably 10 things that it could be. But she's talking about let's increase the strength of the patellar tendon. The exercises they do to overload it are a leg extension and a single leg leg press.
I heard the clip on your Instagram when she said leg extension. I was like, damn, dude, there's been so much conflicting information with leg extension. And look, some legit coaches who have worked with people with knee issues will say, yeah, you can do eccentrics, you could do 2 up, 1 down, heavy eccentrics on the leg extension. I've worked with doctors of physical therapy that talk about too much shearing force on the knee during the leg extension. So I'd love to hear what Jill said about this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopefully gonna have that out in a couple weeks. But
what was the gist of it? Leg extensions.
So because going back to, if you have jumper's knee, you're probably a great jumper. And if you have jumper's knee and you're not a great jumper, maybe look at your diagnosis again, because it might be something else. So you put so much force through your patellar tendon, you have to overload that area. So I think us as strength coaches, we're always like trying to check boxes, as we say, and I'm thinking, like, if you have a jumper's knee and it's like, let's check the boxes, let's put you in a bilateral, whatever, full range of motion squat, let's do this or that. It's like, actually, let's try to check one box, which is overload the patellar tendon, and then you're checking no other boxes because you have to really isolate the area.
Correct.
But yes, the leg extension is going to load it. The single leg press, single leg, because you can load it crazy weights, because that's what people need when they have patellar tendinopathy, because they're great athletes. They put so much force through that. You need a high stimulus to overload it. I don't know how much you can load that thing crazy, but same thing with the leg extension. There's no limitation. It's only the quad. And that's the thing with the leg extension. When you do a leg extension versus a single leg press, if you do a leg press, you might have a contribution with the hip. You might be avoiding knee stress. If you do the leg extension, you can't avoid it at all. You're just going to have to be knee stress. But she said split squats are good. Like split squats are probably better than back squats because you're going unilateral. And yeah, I've seen that too. Me personally, I got better knee pain relief from bilateral back squats. But I think it would be because my load tolerance was so low, I wasn't doing anything. But I've had cases where, like, men's basketball players in the past, they see results from jumper's knee from split squats or lunges with weights, or they see results from leg extension. And the thing is, there's what Ebony Rio says, there's no recipes for a tendon issue.
This is huge right there. That it depends. Like, it might work. I've always said, you mentioned training swimmers. You have 50 swimmers. Let's say they're broken into 2 groups of 25. And 8 a.m. group has this great energy, but 9 a.m., they're all the same. They're all like, they're broken up into the same, like we're training like sprinters and distance swimmers, but the 9 a.m. group just doesn't bring the energy. And so you have to change the way you coach, whether it's your energy, whether it's even some of the exercise selection to get the effect, but you're still training the same athletes. And that's also the tricky thing about coaching. I think if you're a good coach, you're kind of saying, listen, I've been doing research. The leg extension and leg press is what fixed the patellar tendinopathy. But then it's not working for somebody and you don't want to change. And I think that's where a great strength coach is like, all right, we're going to have to test out one thing at a time, like you said, to actually get a valid answer. So I'm doing 2 things. Now we don't know what's actually working.
Yeah. And if we talk about pain, if we talk about like jumper's knee pain or pain in general, dude, that's the hardest thing in the world to fix on people, because it goes into their brain, it goes into like their fear of exercise.
Psychology.
So yeah, but if we could just make it a physical thing, I would still say you have to experiment with the number of exercises, because like Corey G.
Yeah, of course.
He's talking because he's trying to dunk now. He's like 40 or something.
That's
he's
right.
To dunk basketballs, but he gets the jumper's knee, and I think he actually has jumper's knee. I think a lot of people don't have it. I think he actually has it with the way he was talking about it. As the load increases and the speed, he gets more pain, and he gets more pain the next day. That's similar to symptoms of jumper's knee. But he did the split squat exercise, which I talk a lot about, and that actually hurts his knee more. So
what
he
kind
does.
Is it back foot elevated that you do?
I just think it was probably both feet flat. I didn't ask, but I was like, I don't really care. Like he found that the slant board squat, he did slant board squats for like sets of 30 or 45 seconds, 3 times a day, because he gets up at like 4 a.m.
Yes.
So he splits it up. But he says those help his knee pain. So it's like, yeah, do whatever you can do, I mean, understand the principles and get a little bit of guidance with it, obviously, but like you need to experiment what exercise works for you. And if a split squat hurts your knee, find something else. Who cares,
Yeah, don't be married to something. And here's something that's it's a sensitive topic when you're talking to the athletes, but then we have genetics. And now we also have kind of like, I don't know if this is epigenetics, but a kid can maybe start with good genetics, but if they eat such shitty food through all these years, like for example, I coach full-time at a high school. I told them, I was like, bro, I look at your physique, you have pasta and fast food written all over you. This guy, little thick, kind of lean, steak, potatoes, eggs. I see the way you eat manifest itself in your body. And so a 17-year-old kid who's been eating high carbs and processed shit for 8 years, like you may have had a chance to have looked differently, but it's like the food can manipulate their genetics essentially. And it's something that sometimes you got to tell people like, look, genetically, you may be more predisposed. Your body may not be as durable.
Yeah. That's I mean, I was actually having a similar conversation with a diver and a swimmer today of like, because with the COVID thing, we're getting like the trainers are all split up, whatever, but they're talking about like divers get certain specific kinds of pain. And they were talking about a trainer that could deal with or be familiar with those. I don't know what she was specifically she was talking about. But I was like, I mean, I think if I was an athletic trainer, I would be, I don't know how I could do that job, because it's like an athlete comes to you and they're in pain over and over and over. And it's like, the reason why you're in pain is maybe because you slept 2 hours last night, and I can cup you and dry needle you and do all this stuff in the world to put a Band-Aid on a thing. But like in the first place, you don't care. So I can understand when someone, if they were, I mean, even a strength coach, if you're a strength coach or an athletic trainer and you just like over time get tired of doing your job, I can understand why, because you have people that are not serious and they don't take care of themselves and they don't eat the right foods. And then they come in, oh, this hurts. I need you to rub my back or something, and be like, dude, like what's wrong with you?
What's interesting that you say that is when I had my first location, I was near Rutgers University, and we were training. One of our members was the athletic trainer for wrestling and another sport, and he hated it, and he eventually left. And he said, every day, everybody that walks through my office is complaining. And it reminds me of like a doctor who always has to see sick people. I figure eventually the emotional, like, I don't want to call it negativity, but it's not a positive emotion that's coming through. And eventually you'd start taking it on and it exhausts you. Because here's what I tell people, and you're a younger guy, as I always said to the college guys, I go, guys, what's harder, us doing a set of 20 rep squats or the last argument that you had, the last blowout you had with your girlfriend, right? I'm like, dude, you get into a bad argument with your girlfriend, your stomach hurts, you can't sleep, you feel stressed out, you feel weak. That your body doesn't know that it's being stressed from a squat or not. And emotional stress destroys people. You know,
Yeah.
it could just destroy people. So you
Dude,
saying that, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of factors that come into why somebody or something is hurting. And then going back to what you said, what may or may not work. I hate to use that answer, but it's like, it depends, because it depends on what
yeah.
works for you. It depends on how you're sleeping, how you're eating, your emotional stress, the kind of whole ambiance that you're part of.
I dude, I
Yeah,
think of you watch NBA?
no, I don't watch too much
Um
sports.
I don't watch much. You know Kawhi Leonard.
Yes,
Kawhi Leonard, like his personality just seems like he is, I don't know, he doesn't. But anyways, what the relation here I'm talking about is like an athlete who is so influenced by lifestyle factors and what people say and everything.
right.
I read the other day that the best athletes don't get noceboed, you know, they just ignore everything.
Oh,
And I'm
very,
thinking of
yeah.
Kawhi Leonard. It's like, who's going to tell Kawhi Leonard anything that he's actually going to listen to that's going to negatively influence him? There's no
They,
way,
yeah, they said
you know?
Michael Jordan was like big time, like no, nothing could have like hindered that guy. Whether it was, and then they said he was also the master of kind of like psychologically psyching everybody else out, like the things he would do. And to me, the psychology behind training is interesting. That's why even incorrect training, like shit that doesn't make sense from a program design standpoint, even poor technique, yet that athlete can be great because he believes in it. For example, you know, our buddy Travis Mash will often post on Twitter like crazy stuff that an NFL guy is doing. He's like, what the F is this? But you know what it is? High level athletes are often very eccentric. They're weird, they're strange, they're pretty crazy. And so they believe in some crazy training. And when you do some crazy odd stuff with them, now they believe more in themselves. And one of the biggest transfers of training is greater self-confidence. You could have the best prepared athlete, but if he or she does not believe, it's over. And you could have really shitty training, but if that athlete believes, that athlete is now dangerous to the competition. It's
Dude,
super intriguing.
that's what feels tough when you deal with so many athletes, you know, because how can you get to that level of understanding them? I feel like it's impossible.
Well, I always talk about I fail every day, you know, but I've learned the most from the weirdest athletes. And I look back as sometimes some of the kids I used to train in college, now they come back and stop by and they train. And it's like, it's interesting. I tell them, we get along better now than when I was coaching you at the university level, because they were so eccentric that they refused to do anything with a team. Everything always had to be tweaked and tailored. And so you need what I call, the way I've been explaining it, I've been doing a lot of these like consults for university teams with the downtime, is I tell them, if you ever saw the movie 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler and his wife keeps forgetting, she has amnesia every day, I go, that's how it is with athletes. I go, you might have to coach this kid hard for this exercise, but then the rest of the workout, the way you give feedback might be kind of like you're just coasting with him or her. Another athlete might respond great to sarcasm, and then the kid to his right or left cannot have any kind of jokes. He or she takes it completely personally. So you need like all these multiple personality traits within the same room. And so what helped me a lot was just being able to juggle a lot of things at the same time. So I had a kid on our team that was a real special kid, a great wrestler. He was also very eccentric. He would sometimes stalk Instagram pages of like another high level MMA fighter. He'd see something, he'd send it to me, and then he'd say things to me he didn't truly understand like we do, but he kind of got it. He'd say, Coach, need to work on my fast twitch tomorrow. Can we do some fast twitch work? I know what that means. When we're warming up, we're going to have to segue into some jump training. We're going to throw more med balls. We're going to do plyo push-ups. When we back squat, everybody's going to be maybe working up to heavy triples. He doesn't want to go heavy. He needs speed, because if he starts grinding, he doesn't like it. He doesn't believe it. It fucks up his chi, as I call it. You don't want to fuck up the kid's chi. And so, all right, okay, listen, John Smith, while they're going up, I want you to add weight one more time, stay at that weight, and just blast for 3 reps, speed all the way. But then they might want to go heavy on weighted calisthenics. And so it's like, I got this general framework, but I'm also prepared for the individual discrepancies that they have psychologically to get them to buy in. I'd say the last example is this. The new high school I'm working at, I went in, it's the first 2 weeks, I don't have a schedule, and everything I see is horrific. I see like a couple half-hearted sets of benching and then a lot of curls, all different kinds of crazy curls. And in those first 2 weeks, there'd be kids coming in, and I'd say, hey, Jake, my name's Coach Evanesh. I'm the new strength coach here. I've got a group of wrestlers coming in. You want to train with us? No, I'm on my own program. And I'm thinking to myself, what the this fucking 15-year-old kid's on his own program? I'm like, all right, maybe he saw a good Instagram or a good YouTube, and maybe he researched it. But then I realized they don't trust me. And then I realized what they believe in is benching and curls. So I made sure at the end of every workout, we did curls all the time. I showed them a new curl. Guys, today is barbell curls. Here's a different curl. You know, you're going to do a iso hold on this arm, hammer curl that side, iso hold this side. I would just show them different curls. Here's crossbody curls. Here's power curls. It's like a hang. I just showed them a different curl every workout. It was like conjugate curling. But I knew that if I could get their arms pumped up at the end of every day, they'd believe in me and come back the next day for all the other shit. So it was like I'd have to go through stuff to get them to curl. And dude, it takes time, man. To this day, I still am trying to get better with these different mindsets. The toughest one for me to work with, and you and I kind of chatted about it earlier, is kids who are not tough, because it is a inch by inch, brick by brick, slow process to get them to turn the corner and get semi-gritty. Like they don't have, everything is like they're exhausted, they're dying, it's so hard, this hurts, my calf is tight. And so it's like, it takes so long, and that's very tough for me to work with, because I'm used to working with people in the early days. It was like, do pull-ups, carry the weight, jump, sprint, okay, throw up, back to work. Like they just came right back to it. Now it's like, oh my God, I think I'm dying. Like they get crazy. And so I'm having to evolve with these times of kids being different, because my buddy said it today. We chatted earlier. He's a former Navy SEAL. He goes, Zach, he goes, hard people do hard shit. And he goes, you don't get tough unless you do tough things. It's as simple as that. So if somebody's coming to you in college and hasn't done tough work because they were maybe genetically gifted or they were more talented, and now the competition, it's a very hard process to get them to turn when for 8 years they've been winning by doing jack shit and coasting through practice. And now you got to get them to, to make the jump. So it's interesting, man. I'll say that it's interesting. So let me ask you this, Jake, because you mentioned it earlier, and I heard you mention it with Travis. You interned with Cal Dietz, and I didn't know how much Cal is boots on the ground at the university, and the triphasic has really taken off. And when I was at Rutgers, I always share the story. We wrestled Minnesota, and I was like, all right, I want to see if these Minnesota guys have a different looking physique, if they're just hyper explosive, if they're completely overpowering us. And I didn't get any kind of like, whoa. Now, I didn't know if Cal's the director, everybody trains triphasic. I knew that when you're in a university, there's a lot of things going on. So what were some takeaways that you picked up from Cal, things that you're still using, or things that you thought was going to happen but didn't happen?
Yeah. Well, when I was there, I mean, I still go back and visit. I haven't been able to because of uh, everything's shut down recently. But
Travel
um,
restrictions.
yeah, but I don't think Cal works. Cal's, I mean, mainly hockey,
Yep.
men's and women's hockey. Maybe he did wrestling. I'm not sure, but the sports seem to go all over the place. But anyways, I interned with every strength coach they had there, every team except for men's basketball. They had their own guy. I think they were doing their own thing. But what with Cal was like, I read Triphasic in college, and it like blew my mind. I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yep.
And then I whatever experimented with myself, and then I went there, and they were doing the timed stuff. They're doing like Monday, Tuesday, 7-second sets. Wednesday, Thursday, 5-second sets. Friday, 10-second sets. And it was like, it made no sense to me at all. But at the time, Matt Van Dyke, he was an assistant there. He is now, I think he was with Texas. I don't know where he's at now. He might be with the Texans or something. But
Okay.
I basically, because Cal was so busy with other stuff, asked him every question I could think of, and he was able to justify a lot of the programming. But it was like, for the first 2 months, I was just like, dude, this is crazy. This is all stupid. This makes no sense to me, because I was like familiar with like Joe DeFranco type training style and stuff like that.
Sure.
You know, it's like 4 sets of 8s or something, and now they're being like 5 sets of 7 seconds on an exercise. You
How are
know,
they? How are they timing things?
a
Did they
seven
have a?
second eccentric. You just count. You got to yell, so you're counting so often in the lift. But yeah, if you're an
That
intern,
is nuts.
you just like
After
counting.
2 months, I'd be like, "Holy shit! I'm tired of counting to 7."
But it was interesting because they would train based on like a super compensation model. They would train for two
Yes.
weeks and then 1 week completely off. So he would really crush them for 2 weeks, and then they take 1 week completely off. I'm not totally sure how he does it now, but it was interesting stuff. And then I left. I came to Youngstown. I tried to apply some of that, but it's like, I work with basketball. It's a different animal. You can't really take a women's basketball or men's basketball and kill them for 2 weeks with super maximal weights, because they're playing basketball every day. They're jumping, they're
Correct.
changing direction, they're running. And anyways, or at the end of it, they're just going to hate you, because you're killing them, making them sore. So as far as applying it now, I mean, I have a program, vertical jump. My vertical jump program has the French contrast method, because I think that's a good way to cover a lot of jumping, or different, like, I guess, force velocity ideas within jumping.
Yep.
But yeah, he did influence me there. I guess he influenced me on the stress aspect. I think there's two camps. There's the Cal Dietz way of like super maximal weights, destroy the athlete, let them recover. And then there's like the 1x20 crowd, where it's like,
Which
take
I saw
everything as
you
easy
do.
as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which I,
which
I
is like,
saw you kind of. Did you experiment that just for yourself or with
yeah, I mean, I've done
others?
it. And then I did it with some teams, but it's like, dude, my personality, uh, and I think my personality also will rub off on the athletes, because they'll see that maybe I'm less engaged. If I'm programming 1x20 and we do the same workout Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm bored,
And if
and
you're
they get
bored,
bored. And
exactly.
I've done it myself, but it's like, I don't last. I thrive on. Have you done neurotyping? Christian Thibodeau's neurotyping course?
No,
Because a
but
lot
I
of
know
stuff.
I know CT.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that you talk about or had talked about with fitting into
The,
what the
the
athlete needs,
mindset.
makes a lot of sense with his neurotyping course. It was super good too.
I've
But
um, I've known him for a long time. I mean, I even told him I could try to look for it in my office. He had a newsletter. He forgot that it was in like '02, and he called it like it was like his Christian Thibodeau's like he had like a black book of secrets book. He had a newsletter out, and he was writing a lot about like contrast and things that people weren't talking about. Him, Charles Poliquin was kind of early to that. My background is in bodybuilding, so what's so ironic is when Cal Kane was talking about these negatives, Charles Poliquin wrote an article in the mid '90s for a magazine that was tied to EAS, the supplement company, which was huge back then. Like they were making, I think, 500 grand a day on supplements, so it was that big. But we followed this like negative, heavy eccentric program, not kind of like I've seen what Cal does. You have spotters on each side. You're doing these heavy split squat eccentrics. Charles Poliquin, I haven't been able to speak to Cal. I've reached out to him, but I always wondered the origins of where Charles got it, maybe spoke with Cal. But in a nutshell, let's say we were doing incline bench on the Smith. on your like last 2 sets, you go 2 heavy sets. Let's say you could do 275 for 8. Then your 2 training partners they add weight on to it, another plate, and you do 3 eccentrics. They lift it for you. We were doing that on incline. We would do it on a leg press. We would do it on a tricep push down. We would do it on seated calf raises. And, tricky for me back then was I was natural and I was training with guys that were not at all natural. And I remember that shit destroyed me. And I had to learn to train on my own. I started training every other day, but we went through cycles of those heavy eccentrics that you added weight after you maxed out on the reps of like 8 to 12. Fucking killed me. But my friends who were on all kinds of, horse steroids had no problem thriving from that stuff. I felt like I hit a wall. So I always wondered the origins of where Cal came up with that stuff. And of course, Charles has passed away, so it's hard to.
Yeah, I don't know where he got
together.
it. I think it's like if you just look at like the force velocity curve, that probably the oldest one, where they actually not just the concentric phase, but like the actual eccentric. So it was like you can actually be stronger with the eccentric contraction. I don't know if Cal took it from that and then just decided to apply it like that. I'm not sure, but he is definitely like. It seems to me, I would also like to have that conversation of like I wonder what he thinks of the 1x20 idea.
Which didn't Dr. Yessis heavily promote the 1x20? Is that
that's his
program?
thing? Yeah, that's his thing. But it seems shocking. Like two very opposites. Where it's like you take, like I remember when I was there, it's like the freshman hockey people come in and it's like the first week they're going supermax eccentrics. And if you did anyone else, even Jeff Moyer wrote an article for Joel Smith on his site recently about like when you do too much too soon, like you desensitize yourself to training. You can never go back because you put an imprint on the nervous system.
Dude,
I went to Wisconsin. Jim Snyder at Wisconsin. He's with men's hockey. I think men's and women's hockey. We talked about the same thing of like, you put an imprint on the nervous system. That's and it's like everyone's saying this, but then it's like Cal's doing very different and Cal's pretty successful. I mean, obviously he's at Minnesota. They have.
But also, if you think of this, Jake, here's a couple things that run through my mind. And Dr. Yessis was the first guy, I believe, to speak about Soviet training, right? He wrote the book, Secrets of Soviet Sport and Fitness Training. And then Daddy's on a podcast. I'll be up in like 15 minutes.
We're like 7.5 feet. They're giant.
I'll be up in 15 minutes. Okay. We live in a beach town, so my kids were surfing. Really, boogie boarding. We're pretty close to the beach. So it was interesting. He wrote a book in 1974. Right now it's Russian sport and fitness training. So I was born in 1975. I read the book. I'll say this because any crazy strength coach, when on my honeymoon while laying on the beach, I'm reading Secrets of Soviet Sport and Fitness Training. And I remember saying in 2004, okay, this book was written 30 years ago, and America is still not doing what Dr. Yessis wrote about 30 years ago. And he was writing about all the jump training and the contrast work of, a heavy lift followed by a jump, or a heavy lift or a speed followed by heavy. And it's interesting to see coming out with 1x20, which, he had been at the forefront of what the Soviets and then the Russians were doing. And then the other comment I have is, Cal training hockey players. Hockey trainers, like wrestlers, tend to be pretty tough. Hockey players are training at a young age. They're oftentimes, I'm finding America now has immigrant coaches here. So I'm training a hockey player now, and his coach is from Russia. And I'll actually send you the PDF they gave him. And it's the first time I've come across a PDF where I was like, dude, this program's good. He's got medicine ball throw followed by sprinting and rotational throwing. And it was like, thank God it's not this, it's got split squats, unilateral work. It's great. So what's interesting is wrestlers and hockey players are trained tough at these younger years. So when you get them, they're kind of ready to like get after it. So I could train a wrestler one way, but if you played, I don't know, another sport that's a little more, let's say, casual, you just don't have the mindset. And that's why when a parent says, hey, my son's 11, Can he train with you? Tell me about your son. What sports is he in? Wrestling? All right, he'll fit right in. My son plays baseball. It's probably, my gym right now is like 87 degrees. He's probably going to die here. We probably need to wait till he's like 13, to get into this kind of atmosphere. So, you mentioned CT talking about neurotyping. I just kind of started learning the personalities of even like myself. I was trained as a wrestler. And so my parenting style is even different. Like if my kids are like, like they don't want to get out of bed, I'm like, you got to get tough. Like I don't know what kind of parenting technique it is, but it's just what runs through my head. Like you got to be tough on these things. So, you right now, you work with swimmers, and who else do you work with?
Well, it's women's basketball, women's soccer, men's and women's swim, men's and women's golf, women's tennis.
Okay.
So quite a bit, yeah.
Some pretty casual sports, except tennis can be intense depending on who they were trained by. My daughter plays tennis. Her Russian coaches are very aggressive. And you know how they warm up? They play soccer with a little soccer ball. They, if they're not on the thing, the Russian coach puts ankle weights on them and makes them run the hill, then takes the ankle weights off and then run without them. And so, as a coach, you're paying attention through the corner of your eye. And it's a Russian coach has some interesting training. And you know what the American coaches do? Run 2 laps. And it's very interesting.
I think that's a team because our whole tennis team is foreign, or all the girls are. That's a team for me that is like the most effortless group to train.
Yeah,
because it's like for me, if I have a certain expectation, like they're gonna meet it. There's pretty much there's no question on any given day that they're gonna meet the expectation. Other teams not so much, and then I can't, because I can't just like, I guess, all the time call it out or get in their face about something. So it's just like you kind of compromise.
Yeah.
But with that team, I definitely can see that. Pretty effortless to train them because they just want to train hard.
Yeah, they've been raised differently. Their parents are immigrants who have different kind of work ethic. And even like, what I thought about when I heard that you were at Youngstown State, the first thing I thought about was the movie or the ESPN 30 for 30 Youngstown Boys. Did you ever see that?
No, I didn't know they did one.
So Corey G is good friends with Maurice Claret, who was a standout football player from Ohio State.
Yeah.
Was like a shoo-in, like this guy was going to the NFL. But in Youngstown, there's supposedly like a real bad area of projects, and he had grown up there and got tied in with all that stuff. And because he was still tied into like the gangs or whatever he was with, it destroyed like the end of his college career. It destroyed his ability to get into the NFL. And so your environment has sometimes you cannot escape these bad areas. And I've trained kids from the projects, and one kid, got murdered. And I always said his dad did everything for him, except they never moved out of the projects. And so it kept sucking him back in. He was an all-state football player, all-state wrestler. He went to Iowa Central Community College, which is like known for a preparation to go to a D1 university. It's like just a dominant junior college school, but maybe you're struggling with the grades. But if you're in these places, I could be in the projects, or I could be in a place where there's no threat and everything is so convenient and comfortable. I will never know what it's like to fight for something. And so I will struggle with anything that's hard. And so I kind of say like, that movie Cinderella Man, my buddy Joe always says, nobody's fighting for milk. I'm not fighting for milk. My refrigerator is full. If it's not full, I could go right down the street to Quick Check or 7-Eleven and eat whatever I want, and everything is so convenient. And I like, my son was just here. He's like, I just went surfing, all right? Or I went boogie boarding. At that age, I was playing Manhunt, all right? And like eating cheese and crackers for lunch. So I always say, like, I tell my son, I go, nobody has ever punched you in the face to take your lunch. And when that happens, then you start getting so scared that you're like, fuck, I better do push-ups every night. because if I don't do push-ups and I don't go outside and run, number one, I can't fight back. Number two, I could never run away. That's how like I began push-ups and running out of fear. So let's go into like another thing that you're really, you have a podcast, the Jacked Athlete podcast. I picked up your book, the hypertrophy clusters book, which I love it. I've been implementing it, and actually a friend of mine, JP, down in Florida, has really been implementing that with his athletes. I saw him comment on some of your stuff, like utilizing the iso holds and coupling it with a heavy lift with eccentrics. And you're very strong. So for context, people listening, I see you deadlifting. Like normally when I deadlift, I'm doing like triples, very rarely fives. You're deadlifting like 5 to 8 reps at like 500 pounds. So you're getting volume. You're doing like 6x6. Talk to us about, getting jacked and for performance too.
Yeah. Well, I wrote that because I guess I was kind of struggling at the time because I was trying to justify why an athlete should even build muscle, because I personally wanted to build muscle, but it's like, if I'm going to tell athletes this, you need to build, and I didn't work with football at the time or contact sports really. It was like basketball, baseball, something. And not just for like the vanity of looking good with muscle, I was trying to justify why you need to build muscle. So I found this research by Jonathan Oliver on cluster training for hypertrophy, how you could actually gain similar muscle, but also get like speed, power gains. They tested the speed on like a bench press, a squat, and then the vertical jump. Pretty interesting study because they used trained Marines. They used people that were actually super strong, and found that the cluster training, instead of doing like 4 sets of 10, you could do 8 sets of 5 and get the similar muscle gain, better speed gain, better strength gain. I believe too. Yeah, strength gain. And then I experimented with myself, and it's just like, you can do it. It doesn't beat you up. It actually makes you feel better at the end. And it's your quality of repetition in the weight room is better. So it's like, I mean, what do you have to lose by not doing it? But so here's what, because I built a lot of muscle over the years, and it's like, I don't need to build more muscle like on my chest and on my back and on my legs. I just don't care. I want to build my arms, my triceps, my shoulders. So it's like, I don't need to do clusters anymore. I did it, and I built a lot of muscle. I built a lot of structure. So it's like something I'll revisit. But now I'm care about vertical jump, So it's like, the way I look at a performance increase is you have the structural side. We have like the muscle, tendon, ligament, bone, whatever, all that stuff you want to develop. And if you develop muscle, it can give you more raw material for performance.
Yes.
So that would be one side. But you have the structural side and you have the neurological side. And the neurological side is like the brain and the spinal cord, the ability to contract fast, ability to turn on and off certain muscles. So I look at my programs as hypertrophy. You're training both structure and neural at the same time. But if you're an athlete that just sucks at like jumping and you're a twig and you have nothing, like, you should probably work on structural qualities. You should work on both all the time, but let's develop your structure. So when you get into the neurological stuff, because if you just skipped that and went into all explosive jumping, fast lifting, the likelihood you get hurt is probably higher because you have no structure to back it up. So my hypertrophy cluster is like 6 to 8 weeks. You develop a ton of structure, muscle gain, tendons, strength, everything that you could possibly need in terms of having a foundation. And then I have a vertical jump protocol, which is 5 weeks, which is mainly neurological stuff. You have heavy lifting in there, but it's a lot of jumping, a lot of plyometric sprinting. So I've people who enjoy my content, I'm like, dude, just go back and forth for like 3 years, work on the structure for a while, work on the neurological side for a while, and you'll build a ton of muscle and you'll jump higher and you'll stay healthy through that entire process. And now,
I like that. I feel like if you're too far on one thing and you don't change, your body will stop you from, I'm conjugate, I'm following West Side Protocol. People hit a wall. I work with a lot of a lot of my kind of followers are my age. And so every 6 to 8 weeks, we do a 2-week no barbell. It's kettlebells, sandbags, med balls, body weight. And they're like, I kind of needed it physically, but they're like, emotionally, I was tired of getting psyched up to deadlift heavy again and squat heavy again. It's like you get to a point where you want to be able to just train. I like that idea of going back and forth on your programs.
Yeah, and then I had a daily training template because for like a couple years ago I was like, I had built a lot of structure, and then I did a vertical jump protocol, and my vertical jump went up. But then I was like, anytime for me personally, anytime I went away from like pump work, or anytime I went away from a lot of jumping work, I would just miss it, So I was like, I want to do this stuff more often. So it's like,
Yeah.
I made a 7 day training template where it's like every single day you do explosive training,
I think
and then
I
you
saw
max
it.
out. Yeah, then you max out on something, and then you do pump work. And it's
Did
like
you
every day you can do that.
Did you share that on Instagram where like a rugby player?
Yeah,
kind
a
of
rugby guy did it. I had a few athletes do it. If you look at Christian Thibodeau's neurotyping system, it's like
Yep.
he has 5 types, but there's like 1A is intense, 1B is explosive. I think that's what it is. But I did my test. I was an explosive where like I love jumping. I love but I also like all the other training styles. So I'm kind of I think I'm kind of unique in that sense where like I do like the heavy stuff. I do
Yes.
like the burn stuff, whereas some people will be more like stuck in one area where like they only like getting a muscle burn. That's the only way they feel results. They hate jumping, or they hate heavy,
Right.
or they love heavy and hate everything else,
Well,
Um,
there's also, from performance standpoint, if you hate the burn, I'm probably assuming when you get tired in sport, you crap out mentally. If you hate heavy, it means you're lacking some guts and some balls, because when you're going heavy, it's like you're facing some bad MFer across the way, and you have to be ready. I always say to kids, if you're taking that weight out on the squat, I call it make the rep or die. I never saw people in my life dumping weights until CrossFit. That's what I always say. And like, okay, you're grinding. Then you went for it. You go. But then I've seen kids, they do crazy shit. They'll give up, they'll face plant with a bar on their back. And so when I look at like, if you fear heavy weights, what happens when you have an opponent who's very strong? You got to have all that. You got to have the power, so you're used to being explosive. You need the rep work, so because it hurts. You need the heavy work, because mentally, it's like you're going to war against a gorilla. It's interesting.
Yeah. It is. I think that's a way of looking at like when someone has a weakness. It's like I think often we try to like, you have a weakness and let's do whatever we can to train out of the weakness. But I often try to look at the other side and say, when someone has a weakness, they usually have a strength. And now we can just neglect the strength, What if they're like crazy great at muscle endurance, and then it's like, all right, you suck at strength, so I'm going to take away all your strength endurance training and do strength. So it's like, where's the balance? I guess in my head, I don't know where it's at, but
it depends.
Yeah, it's
depends
like
on the kid.
If you have someone super explosive and intense, it's like maybe they don't last very good in like the fourth quarter or something. But it's like, well, they're pretty good for 3 quarters, So it's like maybe you take what they're good with, you try to work on the weakness, but don't like neglect the strength and then just make them an average person,
Double down on like a kid, they want to have like these victories. So if we're doing pull-ups and this kid is strong with weighted pull-ups and wants to, put the heavy dumbbell around the waist, you want to do that? Go for it. Just because I've gotten a lot more auto-regulatory and flexible with my training, because if I plan that we're testing or hitting something heavy, but I'm not feeling it, and I kind of get the sense from the warm-up that they're not ready for it, then I turn it into a speed day or a bodybuilding pump-up day. I've always said, like, I remember I was training the Lehigh wrestlers, and just the energy wasn't that high. And so midway into the workout, I was like, all right, guys, I'm going to show you something. It's called running the rack, and I learned it from Arnold's encyclopedia. He would do it with like side raises, curls, shoulder presses. He would start at like 30 pounds and go all the way up and then down. So I said, we're going to do running the rack curls. So I said, somebody like me, I'll go like 35, 45, 55, 70, 3 reps of each. Then I'll go back down. These guys started getting so much. I mean, kids were like hammer curling 110s, but it looked more like the hang clean. And then at the end, I was like, guys, team morale was quite low until we started curling. And it was a lesson for me that sometimes you got to nix the performance work and do whatever gets them hyped up. If they don't believe in it, they're not having fun, because the strength coach, we are obsessed and infatuated with training. They're not so much. And so you have to trick them into it. It's really interesting. What about, with the ISO work? That's been something I feel is helping me. I started incorporating it with our kids. I honestly didn't do much of it before because I didn't research it, and that's on me. And so I started watching your videos, reading your stuff, listening to your podcast. So what has been your experience with ISOs and the holding of the positions, and maybe a little bit of info on Dr. Keith Barr mentioning the high frequency of
Yeah.
like accumulating ISOs throughout your day?
Yeah. So Keith Barr talks about 30-second holds, like as heavy as humanly possible. So I think when I first
he means an ISO hold with holding a position with weight, right?
ISO hold with weight, because he's on he's one of the tendon researchers.
Yep.
And if you look at getting a tendon adaptation, it's like hold as heavy weight as you possibly can, usually at like a mid-range position for 30 to 45 seconds. And that's how you get stress relaxation, tendon creep. You get the health of the tendon. But anyway, I initially got into isometrics because of Keith Barr, and then I started doing 30-second holds. Dude, this whole thing has changed so much over this time, even over the last 2 months, because I've learned so much more about like what is even the point of doing an isometric hold of let's say a single leg stand or a split squat. And I'm at the point now where I say, if you're doing a body weight thing, that's not tendon health. Unless that's hard for 30 seconds, like your capacity is really low. But if you want to talk,
Dr. Tommy John, who you interviewed, was talking about every day, like for the baseball guys, 5 minutes of push-up holds.
Yes. And here's so we're talking, I like to separate it away from tendon health, because it's working a lot of other areas that could probably enhance your tendons. Like if you have a patellar tendon issue, let's say, if you have bad strength endurance in your quadriceps muscles, that's probably not good for your patellar tendon, because when you get into jumping and your strength endurance goes away in your quads, maybe you start feeling it more in your patellar tendon. Who knows? So if you do an isometric hold and accumulate 5 minutes or do a 3-minute hold or something, you probably got pretty good strength endurance. And you probably, if you're going on the toe, you're going to, the soleus also gets good strength endurance, and the soleus is a big muscle in deceleration. The soleus is a huge muscle in patellar tendon health. So we're working like if you're doing an iso lunge, you're working an exaggerated gait pattern. And like, that's the most exaggerated gait pattern you can possibly get into. And if we could say that's an essential like human ability to hold that position, I think it is. We just go in that position and we hold it. And I think if you have kids and you're doing split squats in the weight room with like weight in their back, you see them bouncing out of the bottom, the hardest position, which is when they're stretched out. They bounce out of the bottom, hit the pad and come up, or they just avoid that position completely because you can with momentum. But if you just say, all right, iso lunge, hold the position, now they got to go to the worst position and hold it. And there's no way out of it. There's nowhere they can hide, So you just get in that position and you say, all right, go as long as you can. And if someone makes it 30 seconds, everyone's going to be staring at them like, dude, what's wrong with you? So the iso lunge, I think, is huge for that. Like strength, that length of the quadriceps, you get the hamstring, you get the glute, you get the calf, you get everything. You hit everything, basically.
I think I see you though in your videos doing a body weight iso hold. So you'll do a heavy compound lift, then you're doing a bodyweight iso hold.
Yeah, I usually do that. Like, okay, so like Joel Smith had that in his book where like at the end of a workout, if you actually hold iso lunge, because let's say you're holding iso lunge, the front leg, the quadricep muscles are firing super hard, and the hamstrings, and it's happening off and on super fast. So something Dan Fichter said a long time ago, which was velocity recovers all. If you ever heard of that, like when you do a high velocity movement, it recovers all of your systems. Okay. Instead of like if you did a heavy curl, it would fatigue your muscular system, and then your muscular system would be drained for a few days, and maybe not your nervous system, maybe not your immune system, maybe not whatever. Anyway, there was something he said. I don't know if we can validate that, but so Joel talked about doing it to decrease soreness from lifting. Okay. So if you do like accumulate 3 minutes of an iso lunge, 1 to 3 minutes of an iso lunge after a workout, you should have less soreness, assuming you're adjusted to the iso lunge. Probably because you have the fast on and off contraction of the muscles. Maybe you could do the same thing with bounding or sprinting at the end of a lift. Maybe that would decrease soreness from a heavy lift. That was kind of the idea. But yeah, so doing it for time, like doing it, let's say you accumulate 3 to 5 minutes of an iso lunge. I like the single leg stand too. The single leg stand connects the foot with the glute. If you have kids that have even if they have knee pain. Like I talk a lot about patellar tendon pain, but if you have patellofemoral pain, a lot of girls get patellofemoral pain. A lot of like male athletes, people who are just worse athletes can get patellofemoral pain. It's usually an issue with their foot or ankle or with their hips.
I've been doing it during our podcast.
Yeah. So if you have an issue with the knee and it's like a patellofemoral, it's not like a patellar tendon, because the patellar tendon is usually with a great athlete. Getting the foot and the glute to be better, to have better mechanics of the foot and glute, or just get those more connected, get those with better strength endurance, you're probably gonna have less knee pain over time. Like I don't think you'd have a single person who could just do the single leg stand and do the iso lunge and accumulate 3 to 5 minutes every single day. They're probably going to have better knee pain if they have like patellar, even if you have patellar tendon pain, because we're developing the strength endurance. So I recommend those 2 exercises and just accumulating time, or you can go as long as you possibly can and try to beat the time every single day. That's hard to do if you don't have training partners. It's
Sure.
a lot better when you do it with people, because you're just like putting yourself in a state of misery. But I think for me, it gives me a good idea when you work with athletes and you're trying to figure out maybe what they're lacking, what their problems are. If you can put them in the deepest position, like a push-up, put them in the weakest position, which is at the bottom, put them there and make them hang out and see if they can do it. Maybe they can bench 225, but they can only last 10 seconds on a push-up. There's something wrong there, you know?
Yeah.
So
I've been utilizing it. We got the younger athletes. Now we've got some of our heavier lineman athletes coming back with this, no access to a gym. They haven't been sprinting. They haven't been doing calisthenics. They need a lot of iso holds, because when they do get back to the high school, what's the football coach going to have them do? Squat and bench. And they're not going to be ready for it.
Yeah, dude,
It's
if you just think
crazy.
Just think of like how if we did a block periodization method, we would start with like strength, endurance, and work capacity, and then we would do strength, maybe we do hypertrophy and then strength and then power. But it's like, if you can do the iso holds and get super good at them, that can give you, especially with those 2 exercises, at least for lower body, upper body, probably a push-up. If you can get solid at those, you're developing a base of strength endurance, which If the base is bigger, you probably have a better potential for speed. And maybe because you stay healthier over the long run, maybe you recover faster between each set, between each workout. So I think it builds that foundation. Yeah. As far as like, does it specifically help tendon health? I don't think so for the patellar tendon, because it's way too low stimulus.
Gotcha.
There was one study, which I'm talking about my product. Peter Malieres, Joe Cook both talked about it. There was a BFR study on the Achilles tendon where they went super lightweight, and they saw similar changes to heavyweights, but it was just one study, and I forget who the group was. But dude, I haven't talked about the Achilles tendon. The Achilles tendon is crazy, way more complex. I didn't want to cover that one. I also don't really care. I care more about jumper's knee, but Achilles tendon, you can have issues in a lot of issues. And often if you get a rupture, anyone who ever ruptures a tendon, it's been pathological before. So it was really messed up before you ruptured it, which could be a number of things that have caused that, usually just playing sports your whole life. But a lot of the Achilles tendon ruptures are going to be like, it's actually what we teach. We teach triple extension. We teach people to extend at the knee. And a lot of the Achilles tendon ruptures, they happen when the knee is straight. If someone's pushing off with the back leg and the knee goes straight. So the idea that a Darien bar, I don't know if you follow a Darien bar, about staying squatted, keeping the knees bent, keeping the knees kind of flexed all the time, except for the case when you're doing a vertical jump, obviously you're going to extend your knees. But if you're sprinting, and like not actually locking the knee out could be preventative for Achilles rupture, if that's something but that's going to happen more often in a later population.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw like some of your videos with him, maybe on Instagram. It's just interesting how now some coaches are really just, the way they're learning now is experimenting on self, experimenting on others, and trying to kind of break what was older methods of, the worst thing to say in training and in business, I always say, is we always did it that way. You have to evolve training because the athlete is evolving. The athlete gets a little bit older. The athlete gains weight, loses weight. Volume has accumulated on the joints, on the entire, musculoskeletal system, on the nervous system. And so your training has to evolve. And so, I've always said, like, the 5th-year seniors, I'm training them definitely differently and communicating with them differently than a freshman. the freshman is going through this emotional stress of being away from home, living in a dorm while the rest of the team is now, sharing an apartment. And there's so much stuff, that going down the rabbit hole. You've been doing, I want to close out with this question, Jake, and then of course we'll talk about any links that people should hear, and then I'll link everything on the website. But you've been podcasting quite a bit. People are starting to get you on the podcast. Has there been anybody when you're like, man, I wish they would have asked me about this topic or that topic or this experience that I had? Is there like a question that you wanted somebody to ask you, but they're not really getting to?
Oh, that's tough. Is this what you always ask guests?
No, in the beginning years ago, I used to ask it, but you're really intelligent. You've been doing a lot of research. Most coaches, even, I didn't start getting into this profession, legit full time until about your age, until about my late 20s. And so, I started learning from Louis. I would speak to Louis every week on the phone, and I would speak to Jim Wendler, Dave Tate, Joe DeFranco, like you. And so you're doing a lot more experimenting and researching. And also the time is different. Like with the coronavirus, schools were shut down, and I saw you training. I don't know if that's your home or your family.
I was back at my parents because they shut down the university.
Was that in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Training outside, and I love that stuff. To me, that stuff always fires me up. Like, who's gonna find a way to train when times are tough versus who's gonna be like, I couldn't do nothing. The gym is closed. What do you want me to do, coach? Find a way, man. Lift stones. So I like that. So any topic that hasn't been asked to you during your recent podcast interviews?
Dude, I've never thought of this, but let's see. It usually this one usually comes up. They don't like specifically ask, but I feel like kind of not like a rebel, but like I think of things very differently than other strength coaches, and I think this is maybe why some strength coaches I don't get along with that well, because I look at maybe I call them out for what, like I was on Rebel Performance podcast, and they were like, one of the questions they had was, we were talking about athletes. They don't come to university to lift weights. They come there to play their sport. And they were like, well, that's interesting. So how do you develop buy-in with athletes? And I was like, I don't develop buy-in, because I was like, every strength coach in the world has their system of developing buy-in. And I think it's garbage. Like, you can't tell me your program is perfect. Let me come watch a week of your workouts, and you show me that you have a solid relationship with every kid and that they always want to be in there and train and everything, because that's the way you make it sound. So yeah, they were asking me that, and I was like, I don't. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like I have standards, I have expectations. If people meet them, maybe people should meet them. If people don't meet them, maybe I call it out. Maybe I don't. You don't know who the person is. You don't know what the coach wants out of you. Dude, there's too many moving parts. What people maybe it's a hard question for me, but like, I just think, why do I think differently is probably because I probably like you, or like you come into the field and it's like, all right, do the squat, do the chin up, do this, and everyone just listens to you. You expect them to listen to you, and then over time people are like questioning you, and it's like, you don't expect that. It's like, well, now you need to change your coaching style, or you need to just leave the field, because that's just what's going to happen. You're not going to get along with people.
Exciting stuff, though. It's exciting.
But the thing was like, dude, for like maybe 8 years, I had thought of my job as a strength coach, improve performance, prevent injuries. And then we got a woman soccer coach, actually got hired here a couple of years ago. Brian used to be a strength coach, Brian Schrum. He has his own podcast, actually. But he challenged all my beliefs, and that changed my mind completely of like the things that we value in strength and conditioning. Like, we'll sit in an office and talk about like the methods of French contrast or something. And it's like, dude, this might not matter at all for the soccer girl putting the ball in the net. What does this mean? This might mean nothing at all. And we're sitting in an office spending hours to be so zoomed in, whereas we should probably zoom out and be like, dude, these athletes, like, and often with soccer, you get at college level where it's like they come in, girls come in, they might have 10 days to train before the first game. And the strength coach wants to take them and say, you guys are all weak. We need to strengthen your hamstrings to prevent injuries. And you do RDLs and Nordics and you blow them up and then they go get more injuries, you know?
That's right.
Yes. So, and then the whole idea of injury prevention, the term prevention means you stop something from happening. So if you use the term injury prevention and you have an injury on your team, you should be fired because you're bad at your job. But you need to use the term injury reduction because you can simply reduce the likelihood. You cannot stop an injury from happening unless you tell them to sit on the bench. But maybe they still get injured because lightning might strike on the bench or something, you know. That's mainly it for me. Is like for about 8 years, I would sit in the office and talk about the specifics of French contrast and think I was making this major difference on an athlete, when in reality you're probably not, and you need to zoom out. Like ideas like the hierarchy of needs, you know, like we talk a little bit about that, of like if an athlete isn't comfortable in their surroundings, if they're not happy with other things in life, they don't care about French contrast, you know. They don't care about optimizing performance if they don't have any friends or if they're pissed off about their significant other or something. So it's like you have to zoom out. Otherwise, you're just going to be stuck thinking of things that don't really matter, you know?
Yeah. And look, the strength coaches that are so, you know, this has been a theme I've had to speak with to these universities is like, look, sometimes you need to put down Zatsiorsky's book and you need to put down super training and you need to just talk with the kids. And you need to find out what's important to them and why they're actually in this sport. And, you know, at that college level, sometimes we're meeting them at their burnout stage or, you know, they're ready to implode. It's a really interesting time, and you need to be, you know, to say we are I like to use the word performance coach because sometimes it has nothing to do, like you said, with the program design. And you know, your director might want this next 4-week plan, but I remember Buddy Morris saying, like, look, always be ready to come in and erase the whiteboard after you see them walk in. If they're yawning and not hyped up, be prepared to adjust. He said, every workout is imperfect. It's always flawed. There's no such thing as a perfect program. But I think now what we battle is, all right, the workout might be flawed. How flawed is their lifestyle? That is going to, like, we could have, you know, Cal Dietz, super smart guy. But think about this, like in decades past, there were football teams winning national titles doing one all-out set of high-intensity training on hammer strength and Norless machines. What the F is that? You know, like they would go forced reps, then they would go negatives, then they would go drop set. And that's how you know, I think Penn State was a high-intensity place, and they were winning national titles. And so the athlete was so genetically gifted, number one. Number two, they believed in the program. So even though the program was not best suited for performance, it's best suited for a bodybuilder, they believed in it. Bang, transfer of training. You know, transfer of training because I believe.
I think when we like talking back to like the nocebo point where like the best athletes can't be, and it's like I think in the past, like it probably was harder to like nocebo people because they didn't go on they didn't have social media and phones where they could see what they're missing with their strength coach. But now it's like they might see a billion other things where they feel they're missing, or they feel like they're missing out because everyone posts the best parts of their life on social media, you know, that they could be down about that. But it's like back in the day, it's like if you only had like one university in the stores you shopped in and stuff, and you didn't have Facebook and stuff like that, it's like you were just stuck to your circle, and that probably was the best thing for performance, you know?
I love that you say this. I tell the kids all the time, I say, guys, every night I went to bed at 10:15. Every morning, 6:07 was my alarm. When I went to bed at 10:15, I didn't have a phone. I couldn't look at stuff. You know, my wife and I, we take our kids' phones because I know if you don't sleep, it's a waste. If you don't eat, it's a waste. My son is turning 12 Friday. He's bigger than me when I was a freshman in high school. He's going into 6th grade. He's already bigger. So I joke, I'll be like, Ethan, you know why? Steroids. I just mess with him. But the real thing is we've been feeding our kids like they live on a farm. You know, it's eggs, it's oatmeal, it's bacon. For lunch, they never buy lunch. It's a turkey or tuna sandwich. It's always a piece of fruit. It's yogurt. They come home, they have a small dinner. Then they go to sports. Then we have the next dinner. Then at night, they have a snack. They might have a bowl of cereal. They may have another breakfast. But I have kids, come in at 6 o'clock. They had a bagel with bacon, egg, and cheese. One thing all day. And it's like, bro, now everything's wasted, man, because you don't want it. You don't want to eat. The food is always what's the food, the sleep, the lifestyle, all those, it's pieces of the puzzle. Who could put the most pieces together? And then genetics. That's, and then, I'm not even sure if that's the proper word, or, can I influence your genetics more so by training you and feeding you and giving you the proper lifestyle in your younger years? It could accelerate what your genetics can become. That's how I think. I get crazy with this stuff. I could go. That's why I like to go down the rabbit hole with stuff. So let's give everybody. You've got a podcast, you've got a website, and of course, I'll link everything up on my website at zachstrength.com. So, but for the listeners, where can we guide them to?
Yeah, so I'm mainly on Instagram, Jake Tuura. My last name is Tuura.
Yep.
I have a website, Jacked Athlete. I post all my content there. I have a couple programs, some free programs, free stuff, and then I'm releasing this jumper's knee. I think I'm just going to call it jumper's knee protocol, because there's not currently, in my opinion, there's not a good resource out there for patellar tendon issues, and they're pretty common in men's basketball, jumping sports. I guess that's about it. Anyone who's a good, and usually male, there can be females in basketball, usually volleyball, that have those issues. But I'm releasing this resource to hopefully be like the ultimate guide for jumper's knee. But yeah, Jake Tuura on Instagram, and then Jacked Athlete is my website. My podcast is Jacked Athlete Podcast.
Yeah. Jake, do you think parents would be able to understand what's going to come out in your book?
I'm trying to. I'm writing an ebook, and I also have like probably 90 minutes of videos.
Oh, wow, nice.
To explain it all.
Cool.
But really, it starts off, you have to diagnose it properly. Yep. And maybe if you go to some doctors might misdiagnose it, so you have to be aware of that. And then understanding tendons. The whole idea is that, because I just said you can't have a recipe for tendons. So if I release a product and give you a template or a recipe, that's probably a bad product. I need to release a product where you can understand everything there is to know about tendons and about the patellar tendon, and then you can go make your own training choices, because that's how you're going to actually help athletes suffering with those issues. You can't just tell them, go do the leg extension, 5 sets of 45. That's not going to help them. You need to understand what's going on at the tendon level, what's going on at the brain, what's going on with the entire body, and what you can do to fix issues or avoid them in the long run. And a lot of the jumper's knee can come from just killing kids before their patellar tendon actually attaches. Dude. If you play too much basketball,
I have a story.
Make them pathological.
Talking about that younger stuff, we'll have to do a part 2. But I remember training a basketball player in 6th grade who had been AAU since 2nd grade. He broke his foot while jumping rope at our gym. Jumping rope, yeah. And the dad was like, I don't know what were you doing? I was like, listen, nothing breaks when you're doing it. My car didn't break in California. It's everything I did driving across country. Yeah. And then it broke down. And I said, you're doing 11 months of basketball since he was in 2nd grade. He hasn't played another sport. And it's like, we need to chill out. He broke his foot jumping rope. Yeah, craziness, wow. Right? So, yeah. All right, man, we will definitely do a part 2. Everybody who's listening to the Strong Life podcast, want to thank you for listening or watching. If you could share it with a friend, leave a review, that always helps us. And go to zachstrength.com to get on the newsletter, and visit Jake, support him. Before we recorded, I'm 44. I bought his course 2 weeks ago, and I just think it's interesting. As coaches, we want people to pay us, but many coaches don't want to pay somebody else to learn from them. It's a strange dichotomy. And if you're a coach and really believe in coaching, then you're going to seek out to learn from other coaches. So that's, as Forrest Gump said, that's what I got to say about that. All right, guys, thanks for watching and listening. Jake, hang tight while I just shut it down here.